Season 4, Episode 17, Night Terrors. It's October, so I figured I'd talk about another one of Star Trek's attempts at being spooky. And I say attempt because I don't know if they quite hit the mark on this one. It's a little goofy. It's a lot goofy. Let's just get to it. The episode opens up with the Enterprise coming across the USS Britain, which has been lost for 29 days. And it's a Miranda-class starship, just like the Reliant from Wrath of Khan. I like Star Trek ship designs, and the Reliant has always been one of my favorites. What can I say? I'm a bit of a ship nerd, I guess. And Troy senses life on board, but you can't elaborate any further. I mean, what else is fucking new?
There is life on board, but...
What is it?
I don't know. Something...
And they beam aboard, and they discover that the Britain is in perfect working order. But all the crew are dead. They apparently killed each other. And they end up finding a sole survivor who is a catatonic betazoid who can't speak, but Troy can hear his thoughts, if that's what you want to call them. He's not making much sense. And Geordi and Data can't get the Britain working. It's adrift in space for seemingly no reason. The plot thickens, which is good, because it's still pretty thin at the moment. And Dr. Crusher confirms that all 34 crew members killed each other for no reason. And the captain's log of the Britain shows that the captain was completely off her fucking rocker, paranoid, and she admits to killing her first officer. So it's a pretty fucked up situation. And it gets even more fucked up, because Troy has a dream where she's floating around in some green fart clouds. She hears a disembodied voice that says, "Eyes in the dark, one moon." And Troy responds by saying, "Where are you?" Get used to this, because it feels like this is all that goes on with Troy in the entire episode. It isn't, but it feels that way. And later, Picard basically says, the hell with trying to figure out what happened on board the Britain. He asks Geordi to prepare a tractor beam so they can take it in tow back to the nearest starbase and let them deal with it. And disturbed by her weird dreams, Troy decides to try to communicate with the traumatized betazoid telepathically. And he's not making much sense, like I said. His mind is mush. He says bright out there. Whatever that means. Some of what he says does end up getting explained, but I don't think they ever explained what bright out there means. And elsewhere, some of the crew is behaving strangely. O'Brien yells at Keiko. She comes home from her job as a weird botanist, and O'Brien is irrationally pissed at her. He seems to imply that she's cheating on him with a guy named Tom Corbin. And it's hilarious because she walks in and all she wants to do is talk about her dumb flower problems. And O'Brien is like, "How many fucking dicks did you suck today?" I mean, look at what she says when she walks in.
Boy, what a day this was. I'm doing an isozyme study on some populations of Cardelia, but they're turning out to have these really weird polymorphisms. What a headache.
Is that why you're late?
Oh no, I had a conference with Dr. Balthus. She wants to do a study on the Lenticifer ontogeny of the Caladian thorn flower, but I don't have time to oversee another project.
Was Tom Corbin there?
I mean, if I'm O'Brien, and I suspect that Keiko is interested in another dude, all my concerns would melt away once she starts talking about whatever the fuck she's talking about right now. No way is she banging anybody when she's this into plants. I mean, does he think that she made all that shit up as a cover story? No fucking way. She's clean as a whistle. But O'Brien's pissed off, and he runs off, and I feel bad for Keiko because all she wants to do is talk about her dumb flowers. And O'Brien ends up having a drink in 10 forward, and another crew member comes up to him and tells him about all the weird shit that's been happening on board the Enterprise since they encountered the Britannia. Ghost sightings and all that. And O'Brien dismisses them, says he's got better things to worry about than shades and spirits. Which is odd. It's odd that he would be so dismissive after all the strange shit they've encountered over the years on this continuing mission to explore strange new worlds. They've seen a lot of strange shit. And O'Brien's like, ghosts, get the fuck out of here. And yeah, it's probably not ghosts, but there's plenty of weird, creepy aliens that they've seen. I mean, it's odd that he's just so skeptical about everything, except for the possibility of his wife cheating on him. That he believes. It's like Agent Scully in season 4 or 5 being like, Mulder, come on, aliens, weird shit. That's not real, man. Even though there's like 90 previous episodes that say otherwise. So, needless to say, they're going to try to get the fuck out of there. They have the Britannia in tow, and they're ready to leave. But they can't go. They got no warp drive. They got no impulse. They're trapped, just like the Britannia was. It's a very similar situation to the episode Booby Trap, where they were booby-trapped, except there was less spooky shit in that episode. And a bunch of time has passed. They've been stuck there for 10 days. And Data has discovered something called a Tychon's Rift, a rupture in space which drains energy. So that's what's draining the ship's power, obviously. And they basically need to create a massive energy blast, stronger than even their photon torpedoes. And Riker suggests replicating the necessary components to do that. But they no longer have the energy to replicate complex materials. So that right there answers a kind of big Star Trek question. How come Voyager never runs out of shuttlecraft or photon torpedoes in the Delta Quadrant? Well, there's your answer. They can just replicate the parts they need to build more of those things. Maybe that's a bit of a cop-out. It certainly doesn't explain where the Voyager gets the energy to do that. But I think it's basically how the replicator could be used. There's no reason why it shouldn't work that way. Anyway, they're not sure yet how they're going to create this explosion. And Picard and Riker are in the turbolift. They're both struggling a bit. They don't know what they're going to do. And Picard orders Riker to get some sleep because they need to keep it together. And Riker seems irrationally pissed off about this.
I'll be on the bridge. You can relieve me in 4 hours. Yes, sir. Deck 8.
I don't know, dude. If I was super tired and my boss said go get some rest, I don't think I'd be such a grumpy pants about it. I think I'd be happy. But Riker's pissed off. He's usually annoyed. Riker has like 2 emotions. He's happy or he's pissed. And after Riker steps out, Picard has an incident in the turbolift.
Sir?
All right, everyone, back to work. Nothing to see. I was just testing the acoustics of the turbolift. There's nothing to worry about. What's that? No, I don't know what that smell is, Mr. Worf. I certainly didn't shat my pants. I'll be in my ready room. And of course, Riker can't sleep. I mean, I wouldn't be able to sleep either with a pillow like that. I mean, what the fuck is this glittery thing? It looks like it's made out of a mermaid's ass. And he thinks there are snakes in his bed, which there aren't. So he just had kind of an Indiana Jones nightmare. Tragic. And in the ready room, Picard basically tells Data to keep him honest. Since Data is unaffected by what's going on, Picard is going to rely on him to make sure he does the right thing. He's basically making Data his consigliere. It's also probably worth noting that because Data is unaffected by any delusions, he's going to figure out a solution. I mean, it's only a matter of time before Data saves the day. So the tension isn't as great as maybe it otherwise would be. And Crusher has a morgue problem. This is probably the closest thing to horror that this episode gets. It's trying, though. It's really trying. And Crusher tells Picard that the crew isn't dreaming. They can't dream because they are unable to enter REM sleep, so they're losing their minds. I don't know if there's any basis for that in reality, but that's what's happening here. I mean, would you lose your mind after a few days without REM sleep? I don't know. I think you'd be super tired. But would you be seeing snakes in your bed? Or accusing your wife of being the handjob queen of the botany lab? I don't know. I also don't know why it took Crusher 10 fucking days to figure out that nobody's really sleeping. But okay. And it's weird that the entire crew is affected by this. I mean, they're not all human. And yet it seems like every species on board needs REM sleep in order to keep their fucking sanity. Anyway, Worf ends up leaving the bridge to stab himself. He's about to commit a ritual suicide because he's afraid. That's the only reason. Which is just asinine. I mean, fear is maybe it's a different thing when it comes to Klingons, but fear is basically what keeps us all alive. Then again, Klingons don't seem to really care if they live or die, so maybe they just genuinely don't experience fear the same way that other species do. I don't know. But Troy is able to talk him out of it. She says that to admit that you're afraid gives you strength, which I understand what she's getting at, but that's not true. I mean, yeah, maybe it's like swallowing your pride to admit it, sure, but it doesn't do anything to make the fear go away. He's still shitting in his pants. And it's at this point, everyone's losing their minds, in case you can't tell. Data is basically the only one running the ship. And it turns out that the catatonic Betazoid was having the same eyes-in-the-dark dreams that Troy was having. It's revealed that it's not a dream at all. It's a message from some telepathic aliens who are stuck on the other side of the Tychon's Rift. And of course, their messages have to be cryptic as fuck. Eyes in the dark, one moon. What the fuck does that mean? And they think that the message is asking them to release hydrogen into the rift so that the aliens on the other side can detonate it, allowing both parties to break free. So great, they finally have a plan. And in 10 Forward, a riot almost breaks out. And Guinan breaks it up with the goofiest looking sci-fi rifle I think I've ever seen. I just thought I'd point that out. Seems like the props department maybe cheaped out a little bit on this one. And Troy is going back to bed so she can signal the aliens who can apparently only communicate through REM sleep, however the fuck that works. And Troy basically does this for the entire rest of the episode.
Where are you? I have to find you. I have to tell you.
I mean, it's just this, over and over. I mean, she just says, I have to find you, I have to tell you. And she repeats this again and again, forever. Maybe they can hear you this entire time, and they are just waiting for you to spit it out already. But I guess it's an attempt at adding tension. And they must have gotten the message somehow, because the rift explodes, and the Enterprise and the aliens have broken free. I think maybe they were just tired of hearing Troy say the same shit over and over again. So they decided to try to blow themselves up. And everyone can finally go to sleep. Data orders all personnel to bed while he pilots the ship back to the nearest starbase. The end. And I have no idea if O'Brien ever found out if Keiko was banging Tom Corbin. We may never know. And what did we accomplish with this episode? I don't know. It doesn't have anything to say, really. It's just trying to be scary, and I think it fails. I think when Star Trek tries to do horror stuff, it's almost never scary. Sometimes when it's not trying to be scary, it is scary. Like, Star Trek The Motion Picture is actually pretty scary when you think about it. It's almost cosmic horror. Anything that's beyond comprehension is pretty scary. And V'ger in that movie is pretty beyond comprehension, I think. But this episode is not that. It's trying too hard to be spooky, and the same spooky music plays over and over again in this one. It just misses the mark. It's not a bad episode by any means, but it's not good either. Just average. The concept kind of reminds me of the Russian sleep experiment urban legend, which is, basically about sleep deprivation that turns humans into monsters. Physically deformed monsters. It's not true, obviously, but it seems similar to some of the stuff that happened in this episode. Of course, this episode predates that story by a couple of decades, so obviously there's no connection, which means I'm just spitballing for the sake of hearing my own voice. Anyway, let me know what you think of this one. That's all I got for now, obviously. Make sure you get a good night's sleep. Hope you don't find any fake snakes in your bed. And until next time, take it easy.